Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive with your host, Mpoki Thompson. Today, I am going to have a conversation with the British High Commissioner to Tanzania, Ms. Marianne Young. We are going to talk about Tanzania-UK relations in multiple areas and what the future holds between the two countries. Marianne, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive.
Thank you very much, Nkoki. It's great to be here. And thank you for the very warm welcome I'd had from all the people of Tanzania since my arrival nearly 6 months ago.
Indeed. Karibu sana Tanzania.
Asante sana.
Now, Tanzania and the UK, I've had the privilege to talk to former British High Commissioners to Tanzania multiple times, and oftentimes we try to put things in perspective as far as Tanzania-UK relations are concerned. And now I want us to go beyond what we normally talk about, the education, health, energy, climate change. Can you tell us how these particular relations in these specific areas are evolving, and what would be the new areas of engagement between the two countries moving forward?
Yes, certainly. Well, thank you very much. As you say, we have a long and strong bilateral relationship over many years, and particularly incredibly strong people-to-people links. But I think we've really evolved our relations into a true partnership, so well beyond the traditional donor-recipient one, into a real partnership of equals, where we're working on a whole range of shared priorities, particularly with a focus on the growth agenda. So one of the areas that I'm particularly proud about is the new Mutual Prosperity Partnership that we launched last year to help really focus on economic growth and boosting trade links between our two countries. And there are some really ambitious targets around that we agreed in partnership with the government of Tanzania around boosting our bilateral trade by £100 million, but also leveraging private sector investments and government-backed investment by up to £1 billion sterling as well. And we've had some very good results in that area already. At least £45 million of British international investment and some very impressive increases in our trade figures. So really key areas of commitment and growth across that agenda.
Okay, now we've talked about trade and investment. Now, the UK is one of the leading foreign investors in Tanzania, and we have many businesses from the UK that have invested here in Tanzania. We've had this discussion before, whereby if you're to do a survey or a research in terms of the level of satisfaction that foreign investors have here in Tanzania, at times it's not always positive feedback. Now, this is important because as the High Commissioner, you are an intermediary between UK interests here in Tanzania, but also how they talk to the government or how they engage with the government. Can you tell us, when it comes to addressing issues that are critical for the business community here in Tanzania, how do you engage with the Tanzanian government? And specifically, what are some of the issues that are often raised that need to be addressed as a matter of imperative by the Tanzanian government?
So yes, the UK is the second largest holder of FDI investment stock here in Tanzania, and we have some very big interests through a whole range of sectors, whether it be energy, infrastructure, food and drinks, a whole host. And we have a very active British business group that has regular discussions with the governments and raises issues. And, you know, you won't be surprised to hear that some of the issues raised by British company chime with similar issues being raised by a whole host of other investors that are coming into Tanzania. And those include issues around transparency and predictability. And one key area which has had a lot of coverage already, but which the British Business Group has raised matters with other business groups directly with the government, was around tax. So predictability of tax demands and investigations, and we were delighted that the government was very receptive to hear about these issues and, in fact, set up discussions that ultimately culminated in the establishment of the Tax Commission, which has now started their own investigations into matters, and we're waiting for a report in the next month or so. So, there are issues, as with any business environment, but what's good here in Tanzania is we can raise them frankly and openly with the government and get engagement and steps taken.
Now, are you satisfied with the time it takes for the government to implement some of the suggestions whenever an issue is raised by the business community, and then you sit down for engagements with the government? Because we understand that at times the government systems and how they work, it tends to take a bit of a longer period for issues to be addressed. Now, candidly speaking about that, what is your take about the reaction time that it takes for government to address some of these issues that are critical for boosting investment and bilateral trade relations between the two countries?
Well, taking the example of tax, government were very quick to take note of our concerns, and they asked for very specific examples. We were able to provide those, and not just British companies, but a whole range of international partners engaged with their own businesses. And we presented some very stark facts and figures, and the government were very swift in convening commissioners to look at the issues. And as I say, we're now hopeful that the recommendations will be presented and that swift action will be implemented. But let's see how it goes.
Okay. Now let's talk about foreign aid. We understand right now there's a global shift, and concerns are rising in the developing world, specifically countries in Africa, particularly with what's happening in the US, with the Trump's administration cutting foreign aid through the USAID. This has massive impact in health coverage and other dependence areas. Can you tell us about your perspective, in particularly in what's happening right now, this global shift, and then we'll talk a bit more about how the UK will step in. Just give us your perspective on what's happening.
So obviously, the UK takes note of the decision of the new American administration to freeze the dispensing of US aid pending a review, and that's a matter for the American government. But on the UK side, we remain absolutely committed to continuing our international development assistance and humanitarian aid as a key part of our partnership and support work with international partners. And we believe that collective action from partners is the only way that we're going to get progress with key development indicators like the Sustainable Development Goals. And we remain absolutely committed to supporting the delivery of those in Tanzania.
Okay. Now, but then in light of the pressure that these executive orders from the US are putting on the developing countries, for example, it has been noted that over 300 organizations here in Tanzania have been affected. People are losing jobs. So there is that pressure, not only how will these development initiatives in the health sector and beyond be sustainable moving forward, but also the livelihood of people. Now, this directly means that these institutions will look elsewhere for support. Have you looked at this from a broader perspective and factored in some of the numbers? If these institutions, if these individuals come to the UK, you said you're the second leading country in FDIs in the country. So that means the role that you play in Tanzania is quite critical. How prepared, realistically, are you into onboarding or filling the void of some of the initiatives that were being undertaken by the US?
So I think the whole donor community here is obviously taking stock of what these changes mean and the impact that they'll have in Tanzania. On the UK side, we've actually really scaled up our ODA assistance here in the last year. So it's increased from £17 million to over 50 million for the year 24 to 25. And the other thing we're doing, as well as providing direct donor support, we're also leveraging government-backed finance. So we have some big vehicles like our Development Bank, British International Investment, which has been a major player here for over 50 years. And we're looking to double that portfolio. So we have a portfolio of £100 million here in Tanzania. And then the next couple of years, we're looking to scale that up to 200 million. So we're looking at ways where we can increase our assistance and support and also leverage private finance. So that's another key area where the UK government is looking to engage with the multilateral institutions and see how we can leverage that wider assistance to plug some of these gaps.
Okay, and now there's also a matter that even us as Africans cannot escape from. And realistically, looking at our dependence from the Western countries, the Western world, in helping support our own progress, continues to come under scrutiny. And now I want to ask you, as a development partner, and the mandate that you've taken to support Tanzania, to support the developing world into reaching its goals. Do you think, or do you feel that African governments are utilizing these funds for the progress of the specific countries? Because there is sentiments that are being raised that perhaps there is misuse of funds. There's reallocation of funds that are meant for progress that are being spent on things that do not really bring about sustainable progress. So as a development partner, are you truly satisfied with how these funds are being utilized for the progress of Africa and for Tanzania?
So here in Tanzania, we have a very healthy dialogue with the government. We engage regularly with a whole series of ministers across different portfolios where we provide either direct budgetary support or are helping through implementing partners to assist with key portfolios. So that mechanism gives us reassurance that funds are really well spent. But I think the point you raise about aid dependency is a really important one, and I think that's in sharp focus given recent development in the last couple of weeks. And I think what we're now talking about with the government, as I said, we share priorities around discussing the growth agenda, but looking at ways to reduce that aid dependency and to see how we can boost inclusive growth through our partnership efforts. So I mentioned things like the Mutual Prosperity Partnership we have to really turbocharge our bilateral trade figures, but also to bring in international investment. And I think that's the key. Aid can only take you so far. What you need as the engine of the economy is boosting private sector engagement. And I think that's the key focus that we're looking to partner the government with. And the UK is particularly well placed given the strength of our FDI stock here, but also the strength of our British business presence and the history, the long history we have of working here in the United Republic of Tanzania.
Okay, so now you said that you're talking to the government and you're putting the dependence under a microscope. Is there perhaps a timeline that can be set or has been set for Tanzania to be completely economically independent and wean itself off the support that we depend from the UK? Because again, we often set these development goals by the year 2030. We want to achieve this the year 2050. Perhaps should there be a timeline that by the year 2050, Tanzania should be completely economically independent?
So it's very important here that we're not setting any agenda or timeline.
No. In discussion with the
No.
government.
That's what I mean, and that's why I'm saying the real joy of working here is the strength of the partnership we have with the government. So the timeline is really set by them through their Vision 2050. And we're delighted that the UK government is working to help set up some of the support around that process, which is a really consultative process. We are providing assistance to the secretariat that is running it. And we are convening, in fact, the Donor Development Group later this month in Dodoma to work hand in hand with the government to meet those goals that have been set out and consult both with the ministries involved, the line ministries, but also private sector, civil society, to see how realistic some of the goals are. So yes, I think that's very much the timeline that's been established. And there are other things that we can do and that we are doing to um, help support that shift away from donor dependency. I've talked about leveraging the private sector, but there are key institutions that your government is really investing in, things like the Public-Private Partnership Centre. And yet again, the UK is working in partnership with that centre. We have some technical expertise helping there to really pull in that capital from the private sector to fuel that inclusive growth and help make that transition so that the government is able to fund all of these things independently.
Definitely. Now, this year will be marking 64 years of independence. And our hope is that as we move forward, there will come such a time where Tanzania will now be completely economically autonomous and not dependent on any Western countries or any development partners, for example, to even fund our own national budget. How optimistic are you that that will happen in our lifetime?
Well, I think one always has to be optimistic, and I am a real African optimist. I think you have very strong macroeconomic growth and policies here. The key thing is, the key challenge is to make it inclusive. And there are still a number of issues that the government is grappling with and which its partners are helping with. And those are things like the high poverty rates. And what we're looking to do is really help support and invest in human capital here, because what Tanzania is particularly rich in, as well as all the resources you have, gold, fabulous landscapes, is your human capital, the people of Tanzania. So that's why the UK government is particularly proud to invest heavily, as we said, in the health sector and also in education to really help lay those foundations to reach those ambitious goals that you've mentioned. And that's what we see as our real value add. And, a story that we're very proud of our assistance journey with the United Republic.
Yeah, indeed. As you've mentioned, the population dividend is something that Tanzania is proud of. However, now utilizing it might be a whole other different subject. Let's talk a bit now about when you talk about sustainability, climate change is also part of the conversation, but also energy, access to energy. And Tanzania recently hosted the Africa Energy Summit, Mission 300, and different pledges were made by African leaders, including some of the development partners. Now, what is the role of the UK in helping Tanzania, helping Africa reach its vastly ambitious energy goals of reaching 300 million people in sub-Saharan Africa?
Yes, and I want to congratulate the government for hosting such an impressive summit and pulling together such big hitters in that sector, as well as partners from across the region. And I was really pleased that the UK's special representative for climate change, Rachel Kite, was able to join us at the event and lead the UK delegation. And she announced a big step up in UK assistance for that particular set of goals and priorities. So we pledged, let me get the figures right, £8.5 million of UK funding to the African Development Bank's Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa to help meet the ambitious target of getting another 300 million Africans access to sustainable energy. And that builds on work that we're already scaling up here in Tanzania, which I'm really excited about. And this, as well as the growth agenda, which is a key focus of my team's work. Climate change and clean energy is another area that we're really investing in and increasing our support. So I was able to tell Her Excellency, the President, very recently that we've initiated a new £8 million fund focusing on clean energy transition and clean cooking in particular as one of her keynote campaigns. And we're doing some really innovative stuff with this. We've got over £4 million invested in transforming energy access. And this is engaging with often young Tanzanian entrepreneurs and startups who are coming up with really innovative ways to scale up new energy technologies and look at off-grid solutions. So we're giving them this seed money to see what they can come up with and then see what we can invest in further down the line. And then the other big campaign, as I mentioned, that really chimes with the UK government is our support for clean cooking technologies. So we're putting in another £3.5 million to help promote that transition from using carbon products to fuel cooking to using clean energy and largely electricity. So we're helping with awareness raising campaigns. We're helping with some really creative billing options with Tanesco to get the equipment and providing servicing, making sure mechanics can come out and service equipment to make sure that it's really usable. And that's really exciting. And we hope to scale that up in the next couple of years to £30 million. So we're just starting, and this is an area where you'll see the Brits really increasing their focus here.
Okay, so the 300 million target, that's by the year 2030. Yeah, now in 2025, so that's in the next 5 years. So in some of the support or some of the commitment that you've made in climate change, they definitely have a timeline. How do you do the M&E, the monitoring and evaluation of some of these initiatives, some of these commitments, and how satisfied are you with the level of progress that has been attained so far?
So we have really good dialogue with the government about progress, both with the UNFCCC commitments around mitigation levels, but also we were very impressed with the level of ambition unveiled by Tanzania's compact at the Africa Energy Summit. So some really big goals. And we look forward to supporting the government to achieve those. As I say, we're particularly working on supporting the clean energy transition. We're helping with investment into clean cooking. And we will remain in very regular consultation to see how that's proceeding. But they know that they've got a very committed partner in the shape of the UK government and a lot of expertise. And that's why I was particularly pleased that our climate envoy could come and speak to senior officials here. Also, the president's own climate envoy to talk about taking that forward, particularly at the next COP.
Okay, so generally your response is that you're satisfied with the level of progress that these commitments, these initiatives have taken so far.
And I'm very impressed by the high level of ambition and now look forward to working in partnership with the government to help them achieve that.
Okay, now let's talk a bit more about the health sector. So President Samia was recently recognized by the Gates Foundation for her efforts in the health sector, which is commendable. However, now in light of these changing global dynamics, we understand that the health sector is now at risk. We've been covering on issues to do with access to critical medicine, for example, with people living with HIV and AIDS. The government has assured, the health minister has assured that there is enough supply. But I think only for now, because we don't know what the future holds as these supplies take a hit. Now, how does the UK work with the Tanzanian government, with the health ministry on health security, but also preparedness in terms of pandemics? Whenever these big, massive health crises happen, how do you work with the government to tackle such issues?
So, as you say, the government and President Samia should be really commended on some of the progress that they've had, particularly with improvements in things like maternal mortality rates. We are a key partner in the health sector as well as education. And you know, we really recognise that a healthy society needs to be underpinned by a fit and healthy population. So we have a big £15 million health resilience programme here in Tanzania, which helps strengthen health systems and preparedness, both to detect and tackle disease outbreaks. And that has been useful in supporting, for instance, the Marburg outbreak, where we are working in support of the government and also closely with the WHO to assist. And we've actually released an extra £200,000 to help with testing kits, for example, to help with that particular issue. And then more widely, we have wider health programs. We've got a £10 million program to strengthen primary health provision, and we support the health basket. And another key focus is around family planning. So making sure that Tanzanian women have choice and access to products that can help them space out children and control their family planning in a safe environment through dispensaries and clinics across the country. So I'm very pleased that this remains a key part of our partnership work.
Okay, so last but not least, 2025 is an election year for Tanzania as well as many other African countries. Now, last year we saw the civic polls, so that's for the local government, and in October this year we'll be electing the next president. There's usually political tension during an election year, especially for a multi-party country like Tanzania. So we have different political parties that are eyeing the big seat. As an international observer, because the UK, together with other international countries that are foreign, that often come to Tanzania, often come to Africa to monitor these elections, are given a mandate to monitor, but also issue their own perspective. I want you to tell us about your optimism, if I may put it that way, for the upcoming election, and what do you look forward to as an international observer?
Right. So elections are always very significant moments in the life of any democracy. And I think all international partners, as well as the people of Tanzania, are looking forward to an election process that is free and fair and gives the population a chance to vote for a government that works for its people and its aspirations. And the international community was particularly encouraged that President Samia recently recommitted to her 4Rs around reconciliation, reform, resilience, and rebuilding, which really helps underpin a free and fair process, and is something that I know many political partners across the firmament here has been asking for progress on. So that was encouraging.
So now you've talked about President Samia's 4 Rs, which is a philosophy that has been discussed ever since she came into power. However, we understand there's been a shift in leadership in the opposition camp, Chadema. We now have Tundu Lissu, who is the party chair, and his approach is a bit different from his predecessor in terms of being receptive to the 4 Rs and the philosophy. Now, we'll talk about that. I just want you to tell us how the British government or the UK High Commission here in Tanzania has engaged with Chadema ever since Tundu Lissu came into power. And what are your prospects in terms of the political dynamics in Tanzania now that there's this big shift in the opposition camp?
Well, I think it's really healthy to have a vibrant opposition, and we certainly welcome it in our own country. And as you've seen, we just had a change of power in the UK. And I was very keen to meet people from across the political firmament here, as is part of my job. So I have engaged with Chadema, I've met Tundu Lissu, I've engaged with Dorothy from ACT, Wazalendo as well. And I know that my opposite number in London, the wonderful High Commissioner Mbelwa Kairuki, also met with Keir Starmer when he was leader of the Labour Party in opposition. And that really is a key part of our jobs as High Commissioners in each other's countries. So it's important that we talk to everyone, that we understand what's going on. But I think it's a good sign of a healthy democracy to have a vibrant opposition, to hold the government to account. And I would hope that discussions continue on issues of reform, both here in the mainland, but also with the GNU in Zanzibar. And I think it's a good sign and a sign of a mature and healthy democracy.
Well, Ms. Young, we'll end on that note.
Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk about our big economic development and wider security partnerships. But I think the real issue that helps us differentiate from other relationships is the strength of our people-to-people links. And I'm thrilled that we have such strong links between communities both in the UK and Tanzania. We had over 80,000 Brits visiting your great country last year, taking advantage of the wonderful savannas and beaches here. We hope that that will increase this year still further. And we offered also an increased number of scholarships and educational opportunities. And I'm particularly proud that some of your most historic leaders have also had strong personal connections with the UK. So Julius Nyerere studied in Edinburgh, and Her Excellency, the President, Samia Suluhu Hassan, also studied in Manchester. So I think that really is something we want to build on, and we will hope that we can boost figures of people moving between countries as well as boosting our trade. So I want to make sure that everybody knows about the opportunities both here in country, and that we get all of your great products on the supermarket shelves in the UK. So my real goal is that we boost this bilateral relationship to be a real Premier League partnership that goes just beyond the love of British football, but goes to strengthening the links between our nations, as well as trade and investment and our wider development support. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our interview for today. You were with me, Mpoke Thompson. We had a great conversation with the British High Commissioner to Tanzania, Miss Marianne Young. Until next time, adios.